and in this process, what we call adaptive disclosure. And adaptive disclosure just means that if you have moral injury, right, as you know in your expertise, one tends to keep secrets, and the secrets are transgressions that one did in the military that's against either his culture, his faith, okay, or his worldview that men and women are basically good, and we're here on earth, to help others, okay? And what's been difficult with the war on terrorism is it's a war in which there's no identified bad guy, right? So inadvertently, the consequences are civilians get hurt as well. And so I don't in your practice, when you had counseled individuals with moral injury, did it have anything to do with hurting innocent civilians or hurting family members?
Yes.
Okay. So when that occurs, then is people have a sense of shame, all right, and that sense of shame prevents them from disclosing. So what adaptive disclosure, and the operative word here is disclosure, is the first stage is I'm going to ask you to, in your own words, tell me the facts. What happened that terrible day in which you committed a transgression against your belief systems? Okay, and so the six belief systems we're going to deal with in any adaptive disclosure methodology is STICS. Self-esteem, trust, intimacy, control and competency, safety, and then spirituality. So one of those 5 belief systems, because of their transgression, have been compromised. Okay, so for example, in moral injury, you have to take a look at volition. Okay, is it something that I did, right, or something that I witnessed that I didn't do anything about? In other words, I let an injustice occur, right, or is something that I failed to prevent? So those 3 dynamics are something that the soldier discusses. Oh, I did it myself. I'm the transgressor. I shot this civilian. Number 2 is my buddy, who was the gunner, and I was the driver. He took a shot at the poor innocent civilian, but I didn't say anything to stop him. Okay, and then third is there was this beggar on the road, and I didn't help him across the street, and because I didn't help him across the street, a tank ran over him. Okay, so it's all my fault. Okay, so there's commission and omission. All right. So in the story, and we're just going to use 1 minute's worth. I want you to say whatever the transgression was. I committed something, or I omitted, or failed to do something. Okay, and then we'll stop. Okay. And number 2 is what is the moral injury? How has it impacted you in your interpersonal life? Okay, what are the emotional consequences, and what are the dysfunctional behaviors that are a consequence to you either committing or omitting an act? Okay, and then third is what are the associated emotions? Do you feel guilt? Do you feel suicidal? Do you feel depressed? Okay, and then fourth is what is, I'm going to have you talk about I'm going to help what we call belief system identification. Which of those 6 belief systems have been compromised? Okay, so you decide which one of the 6, and then fourth is you're going to have this conversation with a moral authority. Okay, so let's say you're Christian, and then your moral authority then is your pastor of your church. Okay, so what I'd like to do is we're going to do a exposure methodology in which you're going to use a 2-chair technique, and you're going to pretend like I'm your pastor, and I'm going to have you conduct a conversation with your pastor, and the conversation will revolve around, so you're feeling suicidal and you're feeling depressed because you shot at this innocent civilian. What would your pastor tell you that would help you feel less guilty and less ashamed of what you've done? Okay, because because he is your, your reference for God on earth, right? And so whatever he says should console you. So what you're actually doing is you're consoling yourself, but you're having this imaginary conversation with your pastor to give you a sense of forgiveness. Okay? So after that, where the last scene is, what can you do to give back to society as a way for you to give penance so that you can show remorse? Okay, what can you do for another person that would give that person mercy? Okay, because what you're doing is a physical act as a way to perform penance so that you can kind of show remorse for the transgression that you've done. Okay, does that make sense?
Yeah.
In a kind of faith-based
Sure.
therapy sense? Okay, all right. So we'll go through those 6 steps, and then just take a minute or so to think about what you want to talk about, and then we'll start with that. Okay, so what we'll do is first is tell the facts of the case, 2 minutes. Number 2 is identify what the emotional consequences and the psychological and the familial consequences to that are, right? How you reacted to that transgression. Third is what are the consequential associated emotions, right? And fourth is what are the dysfunctional behaviors that you've been exhibiting because of that? And then fifth is identifying which belief system has been compromised. And then sixth is having that imaginary conversation with a moral authority. And then sixth is what kind of penance would you like to choose to do? Okay? So you take the time now to decide, and we'll spend like 1 or 2 minutes on each.
Sure.
So it shouldn't take more than 12 minutes.
Okay. Let me know when I should start.
Oh, you ready? Okay. All right. So what shall I call you?
Call me Ron.
Okay. All right. Ready?
Ready?
Oh, Mark's been recording.
I've been recording the whole time.
Oh, okay. All right. Great. Ron, I'm so glad that you came today, and I know it's been difficult for you when you called. That you said that you had something on your mind that you wanted to talk about. So I'm here to support you. I'm also a fellow veteran, so what I'm inviting you to do is say as much as you'd like. I'm here to just listen and acknowledge and support you. Okay? So, Ron, in your own words, can you please tell me what is on your mind that bothers you?
Well, there are actually a couple things, and they're related. I was a sniper.
Okay. You're a sniper.
And, one of the things that I didn't think I had a problem with when I was in Iraq was having, a woman or a child in my crosshairs, and waiting for that moment whether they were going to cross the threshold, which meant I was going to pull the trigger. And, I would spend days and hours and days, with different individuals and women and different children who were, in my crosshairs, and just waiting for that moment where I would end their life. And, when I was there, I didn't think it was a problem. It was just doing my duty and eliminating the enemy. But since I've gotten home, and as it turned out, I didn't have to eliminate any woman or child, and for some reason I didn't have a problem eliminating some of the men. But for whatever reason, the women and the children seem to have carried that back with me, and have nightmares, and where I am pulling the trigger, and then I'm discovering that it was a mistake. They were unarmed, there was no danger, and I made a mistake. And beyond that, on just a day-to-day basis, I as a Christian, I'm supposed to show the compassion and the love of Jesus Christ, and
Mhm.
and and I just have a hard time accessing those feelings.
Mhm.
I'm prejudiced.
Mhm.
I know that not all Muslims are the enemy, and that
Mhm.
they are as outraged as anyone over
Mhm.
the Islamic terrorists that
Mhm.
are creating havoc in
Mhm.
the world. But to me, I've put them all in one category,
Mhm.
and I just can't overcome that prejudice, if
Mhm.
you will, that goes against my Christian faith and what Christ would want on
Mhm.
my heart.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I pray to the Lord that just remove this anger, remove this prejudice. And
Mhm.
I was in the supermarket the other day, and I saw a nice young girl who seemed, she had her head scarf on, and
Mhm.
and I'm thinking, is this a terrorist?
Mhm.
She was just probably some, she most likely was some innocent, sweet, loving, young American, girl being brought up here. But in my head, what comes to mind is she a terrorist? And I have to overcome that.
Mhm.
And it's created a lot of shame in me,
Mhm.
a lot of guilt and shame. And
Mhm.
I ask the Lord to just remove this feeling of hatred
Mhm.
and anger.
Mhm.
I just have put them all all the Muslims in the same category.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I just know that's wrong.
Mhm. Mhm.
I'm just having a hard time sorting things out.
Mhm. 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 Sounds like you have a lot of personal difficulty in dealing with Muslims now because you developed this anger and hate and prejudice in your line of work, having to have civilians in your crosshairs, and so you develop this hate for people. And for you, then, it's cognitive dissonance because it sounds like you were raised as a Christian and you're a Christian man, and you were raised to value and respect all peoples because all people are children of God. That's
Mhm.
what I hear you're saying. And as a result, then, you've developed this personal prejudice against all Muslims.
Yeah.
And for you, it pains you because it reaches deep into the nature and the love that you have for God.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, is that correct?
That's it. And I feel that I get angry that when there are atrocities, I keep thinking of the Christians that were beheaded,
Mhm.
and I don't hear the moral outrage here from the Muslim community.
Mhm.
And I just feel that I know that they're probably as outraged as I am,
Mhm.
but the fact that I don't hear their outrage
Mhm.
leads me to believe that maybe they were all that way.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I know that
Mhm.
I even have the physicians that I go to were Muslim,
Mhm.
and I try to deal with the fact that they're good people, they're taking care of me,
Mhm.
and I'm trying to act in a way that I don't feel in my heart
Mhm.
is consistent.
Mhm. Mhm.
So it's creating
Mhm.
just a lot of confusion.
Mhm. Mhm.
And
Mhm.
I don't want to change doctors.
Mhm.
I tell myself they're doing good care, they're providing good care,
Mhm.
but it bothers me that they're of that faith,
Mhm.
and I'm trying not to act on my prejudice.
Mhm. 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 Okay, so what I hear you saying is there's some emotion, associated emotions, to your prejudice, and can you articulate what those emotions are? I heard you say anger. What else? What other emotions
Well,
do you
I
feel?
I depressed.
Depressed. Okay.
I'm embarrassed.
Mhm.
It's not anything I'm proud to admit.
Mhm.
This is a hard thing for me to to make this kind of disclosure that in my core I am so prejudiced. And I again, I ask the Lord to remove this prejudice, to judge people as they are, as they, what's in their heart, and to not put everybody in that one evil category. The presumption is they're evil, and that's just not right. I just it torments me.
Yeah, I hear that you're tormented, and I hear that you're feeling ashamed and embarrassed, because this is not you. This is not how you were raised. This is not your belief system at all, to treat people differentially. So what are some of the behavioral manifestations? How then do you act towards, like you say, your Muslim physicians, or how do you act towards Muslims that you run into that makes you feel ashamed of what you do?
I really don't run into somehow or other these physicians, my dentist and my primary care physician, and certain specialists that I've had to go to. They've all been Muslim. It's like God is playing a game on me. So other than that, I just have very brief encounters with people of Muslim faith. But I see them, and when I make certain comments to my wife, she kind of chides me, and I love my wife, and it's the only time that I snap at her.
You snap at your wife, okay.
And I hate that, because I love my wife,
I understand.
and I just don't. It's just got me very confused. It's got me feeling angry and depressed, and I don't want to just seal law. I'm trying to live according to the way the Lord Jesus Christ would want me to live, with love in my heart, and
I understand.
And not to dismiss or overlook where there's evil, but to not presume that everybody who's behaving, in an appropriate way is evil.
Yeah, absolutely. And I understand what you're saying, because your belief is in a loving and caring God. And when you act in discord to what God expects you to do, you're acting in an unhealthy way. And so then you feel that shame, you feel that guilt, you feel that anger and at yourself. So what can we do right now so that we can have you go back to align yourself with what God wants you to do? What do you suggest we do so that we can have you feel right now a sense of consolation?
I thought, I don't know really, but I thought, what I've been doing is praying. Dear Lord, put peace in my heart. Let me show love to and extend a loving heart to those who are of any faith, any faith. The Lord said, forgive them, Father, for they knoweth not what they do. And I mean, and I feel shallow when I compare how hard it is for me not to forgive. Having seen some friends who were killed, and just always being right on the edge of taking life myself, and again, while I have for men, some of the men I shot and killed, is different than the women and the children who I was close to but never had to. So what can we do? I can certainly continue to pray, and maybe I need to do more to become familiar with the Muslim community. Maybe I need to be involved and share what it's like on my side of things, so that we can establish a dialogue, and so they have a better understanding perhaps of what it's like for a Christian who has served and is just consumed with a certain amount of shame and guilt, and so that I get a realistic sense of who they are, as opposed to just kind of, to use, maybe condemning them all, without knowing them.
I think those are good suggestions, and I think prayer is important for you too as well, and continue your prayers as constant as possible. I also have, as your therapist, I'd like for you to take a minute, and do you have a strong relationship with your pastor at your church? Okay. Can I have you take a minute, and can I have you now conduct an imaginary conversation with your pastor, and with the intent of asking your pastor, what can I do to have peace in my heart? Okay, so can you pretend like I'm your pastor and just have a 1-minute conversation, and I'm going to ask you, what would your pastor do or say to you that would engender a sense of consolation and peace in your heart? Okay? 7 minutes. Okay. What we'll do is we'll have them do 1 minute, 1 minute conversation, if you can, just 1 minute. And then after that, we'll have them do a penance, and that's will be another minute.